It's the most wonderful time of the year, with kids jingle belling and everyone telling you be of good cheer. It's the most wonderful time of the year. At least, that is what this Andy Williams song is trying to convince me of this year, along with all the holiday TV ads and specials, all the joyful seasonal names that are appearing on social media, the shopping aisles that are filled with bright and shiny decorations, the holiday greeting cards that come in the mail, the beautiful light patterns I see as I drive by houses at night, and the countless list of holiday activities to partake in throughout the community. All of these things should be enough to put anyone in the spirit of what we believe is the most wonderful time of the year. After all, this is supposed to be the season of joy, a season of hope, a season of generosity, and of remembering our loved ones and gathering with family. But if I'm honest with myself, as much as I want to believe in this message of Andy Williams, I do not feel like this is the most wonderful time of the year. How can I possibly be in the spirit of the season when it feels like the words spoken through our Isaiah reading today ring true for us and for our world? Oh God, you meet those who gladly do right, those who remember you in your ways, but you were angry and we sinned. We, the people, have allowed the poor to be taken advantage of. We have failed to advocate for the most vulnerable among us. We have not stood up against injustice, hatred, bigotry, and oppression. We have shut out our neighbors. We have turned our backs on the victims who cry out of racism, sexism, and gender bias. We have allowed violence to be our solution for dealing with fear. We have stood idly by while another mass shooting takes place. We have not been the church you have called us to be. Instead, we try and pretend that we are not responsible for these problems, or that they don't concern us, or that there's nothing that we can really do to make things better, or that these things just aren't the church's concern. We have sinned. We have become like one who is unclean. It's hard to be filled with the joy of the season when it looks and feels like our world, our nation, has gone to hell. And then when we add to that all of our personal issues, our broken family relationships, illnesses, our grief, physical and mental issues, financial woes, addictions, and many other stresses, it certainly feels like God has hid God's face from us. It feels like the forces of evil and fear are taking over this world, and it seems like there's nothing we can do to stop it. It feels like the darkness rises. And yet we are told to be of good cheer, to put on our smiling faces, to act like everything is hunky-dory and okay, and that nothing can get to us. But maybe instead of trying to convince ourselves that we are filled with Christmas joy, perhaps it might be better for us to take some time to lament the current state of our world and our lives. That, after all, is what Isaiah is doing in our Old Testament text today. Oh, that you would tear open the heavens and come down,
so that the mountains would quake at your presence. And when fire kindles brushwood and fire causes water to boil, to make your name known. In other words, what Isaiah is saying is, come on, God, be like the God who appeared to us at Mount Sinai. Make something happen to remind us that you are God. The world has become sinful because it's forgotten you. Come on down and let us know that you are still here, that your love is still forming and shaping us. Help us to trust that you are the God who does awesome deeds we did not expect. I don't know about you, but this is my prayer to God. God, get down here and shake things up. Do something to remind us that fear and evil do not win the day. Come down and help us to know that you still care. Over the years, I have learned that it is okay to practice, to practice the sacred art of lamenting. To get angry with God and to demand that God act. For in doing so, we are actually showing faithfulness to God. We are showing God that we trust in God to act with love and forgiveness. We are telling God that we are not okay with the way things are and that we expect God to change it. Laments can be powerful, not only because they can cause us to release some feelings that need to get out, but also because they can stir up hearts. Laments can enact change, or they call to surface that which needs fixing. Sometimes I think that American religion is so focused on the positivity of Easter that we forget Good Friday also has. My God, why have you forsaken me? That was Jesus' lament as he died on the cross. Yes, it's true, lamenting can make us feel uncomfortable because it does focus on what isn't going right. And we live in a society that wants to sweep the quote-unquote negative thing right under the rug. Lamenting is an act of faithfulness and trust. It calls upon God to act, to change things up, to let evil become powerless. And we lament because the good news is that we know God responds to our laments. God responds. God responded to the cries of the people of Israel time and time again, bringing them freedom from their captives. Jesus heard the cries of those suffering from physical illnesses and demons, and he responded to them with healing. God heard the cry of Jesus on the cross and responded it by raising him up to new life, and in doing so responded to the cry of the world by raising it up to new life as well. In our gospel story today, Jesus tells us, but in those days, after that suffering, the sun and moon will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. But then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. Then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds. In other words, the world cries out in suffering, and it will feel like the darkness is creeping in and surrounding us. But Jesus will come with great power and glory, and he will send out his angels and gather all to himself. Jesus promises that he will come. After all, it has already happened once through the cross. It will happen again. Because through the cross, Jesus came. And with him came the gift of grace, the amazing gift of forgiveness, the gift of love. And through those gifts, God transformed the world, responding to the cries and bringing healing and wholeness back to the world by showing us that sin and death and evil have no more power over us. For they cannot separate us from God anymore. And because of this, Jesus tells us to keep watch, to keep vigil, not for false prophets, or for wars, or for a day of reckoning, or for the thief in the night, but to watch for the coming of the Master. Jesus tells us to keep watch, because the promise is he will come, and he will gather all to himself. And the good news is because Jesus has already come to restore the world, we are indeed free to keep watch, to recognize that through his death and resurrection, his first coming into this world, that we have been tied into that death and resurrection, which means that we are in full community with Jesus. It means all that Jesus has and is belongs to us. As St. Paul tells us today, we are equipped with all that we need to keep watch, to keep vigil, to remember that Christ has come and will come again. So what does it look like to keep watch for the Master? Well, it looks like answering those cries of our laments of our neighbors, the laments of our nation, the laments of the world. After all, like I said earlier, laments do indeed have the power to enact change, for they call us to act. As Pope Francis once said, you pray for the hungry, then you go and feed them. That's how prayer works. We lament to God out of faithfulness because we trust that God will change things, because we have seen God change things. And we know that God does, and God will continually remind us of the fact that God changes things. That happens here each and every week through the waters of the font, through the gift of new life at this table, and the cup of salvation and the bread of life. That happens in our prayers and our hymns. It happens in our gathering together as a community to see how each other's doing, to laugh with each other, to pray with each other. All these things remind us that God has come, that God will continue to come. And so we lament, trusting that God will change things. But the truth is that God, when God changes things, God usually does it through us, the church. We are free to answer these laments of our neighbors, of the world, of our nation, of ourselves, with action, because we have been free to trust that Jesus will act, and that he will continue to act until that day when all are gathered. This is the joy of the season of Advent. Normally, during this time, I would ask you to consider slowing down, taking some time to live in the joyful anticipation of Christ's coming, to let go of the stresses and busyness of the season and to just sit and be present with God. This year, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to take some time this Advent season to lament, to cry out to God all the problems in our world, in our nation, and in our own lives. And then to trust that the Master will come, for he has already come, and he will come again. And in that trusting, to consider how we are free as the church, as this faith community, to respond to the laments. For we are the church, and we are who God uses to answer those laments. We are the people of God who have been called to bring joy and hope to all people. Because we have seen Christ come time and time again, and we know that Christ will continue to come. For that is the promise of the cross, the promise of new life on Easter. That evil will not win the day, that fear cannot be the power that controls our world, but that the Christ in us is that which transforms the world, for it has indeed transformed us, and it will continue to transform us through those wonderful gifts of grace and forgiveness. So we are free to bring joy and hope to the world at this time of year. The joy and hope of Christ's coming, the good news that Christ has already come and will come again. And when we go out and spread that good news, that it indeed will be the most wonderful time of the year. Not just during this month of the Christmas Advent season, but throughout the entire year.